Minasan, konnichiwa. Nico here from the Road to Japan podcast and brand new channel on YouTube. And you may notice that things look a little different around here. What you're looking at is the early stages of my, I guess, studio getting made. I'm going to eventually have a backdrop. I got lights on the way, and you're actually watching this on my new camera, and I have a microphone, a new shotgun mic. But anyway, I wanted to get some test footage going to, start working on the video editing and things of that nature. So what I thought I'd do is, this is not going to be a proper episode of, of the Road to Japan. That's going to be probably next week for those of you that are actually following. So for this, I'm going to actually discuss something in regards to a play I saw last night. Now, you may be wondering why would I be talking about a play, but the Road to Japan is a show that's about the college experience, and this was this play I went and saw was a result of my life as a college student. So it was actually proposed by a fellow student. So I just want to say real quick, thank you, Claire, for allowing me the opportunity to come and see this play. And what play did I see? Well, I went and saw the Vagina Monologues, which may sound a bit strange at first. I know, like in the past, I've been not wary or apprehensive, but I wasn't sure what to expect from a play like that. I'll admit, when I bought the ticket, I was feeling minorly concerned that this was going to be, that I was going to walk out maybe feeling ashamed to be a man or something along those lines. But the good news is that that's actually not the case, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing this video, is because I feel that a lot of men out there might feel the same way. And the show itself actually is very, it was surprising. It was surprisingly entertaining, and for a lot of people that probably go and see the show, it was surprisingly informative as well. It talks about, obviously the vagina, the part of the female anatomy, and it is, it goes through like a series of, obviously, monologues, hence the title, where women from various backgrounds and origins, as it were, discuss like their take on it, their take on a natural part of their body. Some embrace it, some are not necessarily afraid of it, but they are uncertain about it. They don't quite understand it, which, I mean, is obviously the case for a lot of men out there as well, that we don't understand the female anatomy as well as most women would probably, wish that we did. The other thing about the show was that it was actually really funny. There was a lot of humor in that show. And I mean, overall, the show was surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but I was, I suppose, pleasantly surprised at how entertaining it was. I actually was very much engaged. The actresses involved, and it is an all-female cast, but that's irrelevant. But they really nailed it. And I mean, part of my personal opinion when it comes to things like stage productions and plays and whatnot is that you're really gonna get I guess the essence of it when you go and see more like a college production as opposed to like a I don't even know what you would call it, a Broadway production? Not Broadway, but like a more professional, like paid actors and actresses kind of thing. Just because like I believe the college aspect of it, they're really truly putting their all into it. That they're giving it 110%, and I mean it showed. It showed when I was at the show last night that every new skit that came up, you know, the lights would come up, and then, you know, within moments of the monologue beginning, we were all very much engaged. We were right along with them. You know, some of the stories were, I suppose, to some would be unsettling. It's not just you know, everyone laughing about vaginas and stuff. It's there are some very raw stories, like they talk about things that happened to women in Kosovo, Bosnia, and some of that stuff was quite brutal. I mean, you know, it's not stuff I was not already familiar with, because I mean, I've learned that in classes, you know, through high school, and just, you know, obviously keeping up with current events and things like that. Although this was not, you know, this is not necessarily current, but it added to the story. And like there was one story that was it was actually one of the first monologues where an old woman was speaking about, as she put it, her down there area, and it was just very engaging because like one mishap during a date completely caused her to like isolate herself from that part of her, and it actually turned out to be a very tragic story. But it's just things like that that just made the overall play a very, very fun and entertaining experience, but also, as I said, very informative. Like there would be these kind of in-between bits between monologues where one of the cast would come out and kind of speak a few facts about vaginas, you know, talking about like nerve endings and, you know, the kind of more science oriented stuff about that. Sometimes it was also factual information regarding maybe the upcoming skit and so forth. But I mean, you know, you can learn from this. And I just felt that it was important to say to people out there. Now I realize that, you know, not a lot of people are going to probably see this video, but for those that do, I highly encourage that you go and check this out. I was of the mindset, you know, especially since I've been doing all of this, you know, doing the show, going to school, you know, just working on making all these changes, and that one of the pieces of advice that I'm trying to follow is actually from one of the fellow YouTubers out there, and they mentioned, you know, because they've done pretty large events in their life, and they say that you know, their philosophy is to do things that you normally wouldn't do or want to do, and that's kind of the thinking that I had when it was known, you know, when our fellow student got up in front of the class and very briefly talked about the play coming up, and it just I immediately thought, oh, I should do that. I mean, under other, you know, like in you know, the past me, if you will, would have said, yeah, probably not. You know, let's stick with what I know and what I, you know, appreciate and enjoy or whatever. But I'm glad that I went. It was just very enlightening. You know, I mean, a lot of the information I kind of already knew, but it was still, like I said, very entertaining. And the crowd around me, you know, it was a very, it was quite packed. You know, I mean, it wasn't a huge theater, but you know, I was pleasantly surprised to see that a lot of people turned out for this. Granted, it was the final show of the weekend, so maybe that had something to do with it. It was, you know, 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. But yeah, it was, you know, there was a large crowd, and everybody was, you know, just as engaged as I was. I mean, every time a funny moment came up, we were all just roaring with laughter. I mean, there was one one monologue in particular where a woman was eventually talking about the various moans and types of moans that occur during lovemaking. She specifically was in regards to you know, more of a like lesbian type encounter, but it was just really funny just seeing the various moans that this actress would go through. And I mean, it goes through other aspects, you know, not just purely, you know, the natural born females. It also talks about things like transgenders, and that was actually a very powerful monologue. You know, talking about how you know, as like a little boy, how they got, you know, mistreated and beaten up and things like that to try and be convinced that they should hide, you know, what they considered to be their true selves, which was they felt they were a woman. And then going through the changes and, you know, the surgeries, the hormones and all that, and then the end of it being, you know, I wouldn't say necessarily a happy ending, but that they felt that they were finally the type of person that they were intended to be. And, you know, one other skit, and this will probably be the last one I mention, and we'll wrap things up here. But the other skit was one that I was pleased about, was the fact that a woman was talking about a very pleasant experience with a man, and just the way that she was describing their encounter. Now, I mean, we're not talking like, I don't know, some 50 Shades of Grey kind of, you know, pseudo book porn kind of stuff. But it, you know, it was, the way she was describing it was in a way that she, over the course of this encounter, began to appreciate herself, you know, just as the man was appreciating her. And we're not talking just in a like a, I don't even know how you would say, just like a, it's hard to describe. I mean, you would get the idea, obviously, if you saw the show yourself, but I mean, he was basically wanting to see all of her. And, you know, the humorous moments was that she would say, like, well, I'm just right here, you know, get a good look, or what have you. And he'd be like, no, I want to see you. And, you know, obviously this would lead to her undressing, and, you know, he would just be staring for, you know, several minutes, half an hour, or whatever. And like the course of that encounter, you know, she would begin to appreciate herself as he was appreciating her. So I mean, it's you know, I mentioned that one, and I say that that's, you know, probably one of my more favorite bits out of the show, because like I said, I was afraid initially that this was kind of going to be a little bit, not necessarily men bashing or anything, you know, and don't get me wrong, this is obviously a show that is intended to empower women. You know, it is a show designed for women and also men. That's the interesting thing about it, and that's what I was happily surprised with, is that, you know, men can get just as much out of this show as women can. So that's, again, why I'm doing this video. It's this type of stuff that I appreciate about, you know, being in school, being in college, being able to go to a classroom and see, you know, a fellow student that's passionate about something, anything, and being able to participate in that passion, which is, you know, I mean, it's the same thing with this show, is that I hope eventually I can reach out to fellow students out there, and that they can, you know, share in this passion of mine about being in school and learning and educating and, you know, improving your future. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be about school, but you kind of get the idea. So anyway, I'm already starting to trail off here, so I'll probably call it good here. But I just wanted to say that if you end up being able to see a production of the Vagina Monologues, and I mean, it's a well-known show, so it shouldn't be too hard to find one. Go out and see it. It's really good, and I highly encourage checking it out if it's at like a local college, you know, because I feel that you're going to really get the good raw, you know, emotions that come through just those actors and actresses that really, you know, just give it everything they've got. So again, thank you, Claire, for allowing me to participate in that, and I will catch you guys next time. Minasan, ganbatte.